Okay, good morning. We are going to talk about the cerebrum today, and cerebrum has two cerebral hemispheres and it is separated from each other by the median longitudinal fissure. As you can see, the two cerebral hemispheres are separated from each other by the two medial longitudinal fissure or the superior-medial border. Okay, so the cerebrum has three poles. One is the frontal pole, which we are showing. Then posteriorly we have the occipital pole, and anterior and below is the temporal pole. So temporal pole is below the frontal pole. Okay, so this is the frontal pole, this is the occipital pole. We can see that posteriorly. Okay, so now what we are seeing, the surfaces. So the cerebrum has the following surfaces. Whatever you are seeing is the superior lateral surface, and you can see over here the median longitudinal fissure or the superior medial border, and this is the inferior lateral border. So when we turn the cerebrum, this is the inferior surface and you can see the inferior medial border. So inferior lateral border and the inferior medial border. So the inferior lateral border, yes, this is the inferior lateral border which we are showing you, and then we are showing you the inferior medial border. So now coming to the superior lateral surface. So whatever surface you are able to see, this is the superior lateral surface of the cerebrum. This is the inferior surface of the cerebrum. So inferior surface of the cerebrum, you can see, and the finger is going inside, that is the medial surface. For that we will show you another section where you can appreciate the medial surface more clearly. Yes, so this is showing you the medial surface, and you can see the corpus callosum which connects the two cerebral hemispheres. These are the different parts of the corpus callosum. So coming back to the inferior surface, so you have an anterior area and you have a posterior part of the inferior surface. Then coming to the inferior border, inferior medial border. So this part is the medial orbital border and the posterior part is the medial occipital border. Yes, so the posterior part is the medial occipital border. So medial border is divided when we hold up the cerebellum. You can see that divided into medial orbital border and medial occipital border posteriorly. That part is also the orbital surface. The inferior surface is divided into two parts, the orbital surface in the front, and you have the inferior, that border, that part of the inferior lateral border is called the superciliary border. Superciliary border, yes. Inferior medial border. Coming to the superior lateral surface, these depressions, what you are able to appreciate, are called the sulci, and the elevations between the depressions are gyri. So coming to the superior lateral surface again to show you the major sulci. So you can see a very nice sulci which is horizontally running, that is the lateral sulcus, and that part is the stem of the lateral sulcus, and it has a posterior ramus which runs posteriorly, and yes, from that stem there is another ramus which runs anteriorly upwards and horizontally and anteriorly upwards. So three rami, one is anterior upwards, anterior horizontal and posterior, and that is the stem. So now we can see the upper part of the superior lateral surface, and we can see a very important sulci, that is the central sulcus. This is the starting of the central sulcus, and it is little posterior to the midpoint between the frontal pole and the occipital pole, and this is how the central sulcus is coming and coming very close to the lateral sulcus or the Sylvian fissure. This is also called the Sylvian fissure. It's coming and ending just above the Sylvian fissure or the lateral sulcus. Yes. So we have the temporal occipital pole. Yes, you can see a part of a sulci again over here, and that part is a little bit of the parieto-occipital sulcus, which will be seen more prominently in the medial surface. So to appreciate the parieto-occipital sulcus, we have to see the medial surface. Yes. So this is the medial surface, and you can see this is the parieto-occipital sulcus. You can also see the corpus callosum, and the parieto-occipital sulcus is continuous and cutting the superior medial border, and it is coming to the superior lateral surface, little bit to the superior lateral surface. So now coming to the superior lateral surface again. So you have the inferior lateral border which has been shown over here, and just before, just little bit in front of the occipital pole, about 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters in front of the occipital pole, you can see a notch which is the pre-occipital notch. So that is the pre-occipital notch. So now we are going to see the central sulcus again, and the area which is in front of the central sulcus is the frontal lobe. Yes, this is the central sulcus. Area in front of the central sulcus is the frontal lobe. Coming to the area behind the central sulcus but above the lateral sulcus is forming the parietal lobe. And now we are extending the lateral sulcus imaginarily behind a little bit, and the parieto-occipital sulcus is also extended down, and it comes and cuts the, it is extended down and it joins the pre-occipital notch. So that is the straight line. And the lateral sulcus is also extended so that it goes and cuts this imaginary line. Yes. So before the lateral sulcus turns upwards, so that is how the lateral sulcus turns upwards. So before it turns upwards, it is extended imaginary line as an imaginary line to cut the line, imaginary line which joins the parieto-occipital sulcus to the pre-occipital notch. Yes. So this is the way we divide the cerebrum into 4 lobes. So whatever is in front of the central sulcus is the frontal lobe, behind the central sulcus, and in front of this imaginary line above the lateral sulcus is the parietal lobe, and yes, behind the line which joins the parieto-occipital sulcus and the pre-occipital notch is the occipital lobe. That is the parietal lobe, and that forms the temporal lobe, the part of the cerebrum which is below the lateral sulcus, and in front of this imaginary line is the temporal lobe, imaginary line which is joining the parieto-occipital and the pre-occipital notch. So this gives all the 4 lobes of the cerebrum.